hear me? Yeah? Okay. So, as Neela mentioned, my name is Omar, and I'm the Vice President of External Affairs for CMU GSA. Basically, I started working on some research for you guys to really understand the depth of what's going on with Port Authority, and so that when you get there and you're lobbying, you really have an understanding of what's going on, so that it can help with just your ask, and also with just being very feasible and viable when you're talking to your representatives. So if you guys look at there's this Port Authority funding research that we handed out last minute. Does everybody have that? Does anybody not have that? It's got a lot of text on the first page. Yeah. Okay. If anybody doesn't have that, raise your hand. I can pass one out. So basically, if you guys look at the first page, it has really an executive summary of what's going on and what's been going on with Port Authority. Just to go through it real quick, there's basically, everybody knows there's a 15% service reduction. It's going to be enacted on March 27th. This is actually slightly good news because there was an even stronger service reduction a couple months ago, and luckily we were able to identify funds with the help of Governor Rendell. Let me see here. Basically, I outlined some of the issues on where Port Authority is facing their deficit, and then also in comparison to other, say other similar agencies for transit, you guys can have an idea of where Port Authority stands. Let me see what else here. Basically, we understand that Port Authority has been cutting costs, and they have been trying to keep their expenses down. The issue really is sort of where there's been a lack of state funding, or a lack of expected state funding to help cover the cost of Port Authority. In 2000, let's go back a couple of years. In 2007, the Act 44 was devised by the legislature, and basically the idea was that this would be a reliable source of funding for all of Pennsylvania transportation. Unfortunately, due to a couple of things, including the fact that the Federal Highway Administration did not approve the tolling of I-80, Interstate 80, basically there hasn't been that expected. It hasn't met the expected the expectations of funding that they were looking for. So basically, it's important to understand that Port Authority, it's not that Port Authority has gone overspending, it's just that they haven't received the amount of money that they were expecting. And that's where the deficit is sort of coming from. Let me see if we can. So basically, if you guys look at the last paragraph there, the idea is going back to the concept of Act 44, where the state legislature was trying to provide this, reliable funding for transportation. Basically, the idea is to go back, and when you guys are talking to your representatives, to keep that in mind, that this is sort of what we're thinking about. What we're trying to ask for is basically that concept again, but hopefully something that will be reliable. And unfortunately, it didn't work out with Act 44, the original one, but maybe we can come up with something that will work out in the future. If you guys turn to the next page, there's a couple relevant facts about Port Authority. I'm sure a lot of your representatives know, but just in case, there are things to have in mind about Port Authority. Interestingly enough, Port Authority was created by the state of Pennsylvania, so a lot of people have the mindset that it's supposed to be supported and funded by the state. Then again, it was created because of the lack of private companies being able to support public transportation in the area. So let me see here. Interestingly enough, you have some statistics here on how many users use in the Golden Triangle. 45% of the workforce uses public transportation. And then as well as, some talking points are Children's Hospital, as well as all the schools and all the businesses in the area. And obviously you guys know about the schools, you guys can talk about your personal experience. The next point is the budget deficit, so you can understand sort of where the budget is, some of the main points of the budget for fiscal year 2011. Again, the biggest point is that the state funding increased by 15%, or it was projected to increase by 15%. So that's basically sort of the biggest, I guess, shortfall of the Port Authority budget. Some timeline facts. I'm sure a lot of you are aware about that, but it's good to have them there, starting from last year, but then most recently in December with the identification of the $45 million to help offset, and then obviously the decision to bring down the 35% to 15% service reduction. If you guys look at the next page, we have a little bit about Act 44 and the concept behind it. Also, you see there the reason why the I-80 tolling was denied. So basically the idea is that this was part of a pilot program. The same thing a couple years back, there was this need for funding, so they came up with this idea as part of a Federal Highway Administration pilot program to toll some of these interstates. And it looked like a great prospect, but unfortunately, because of the idea behind the tolling, having it being sent. So the idea was that they wanted to pay PennDOT a certain amount of money that would come from the revenues from the toll, and unfortunately, just basically under the guidelines of the program, which they thought they had understood, that wouldn't be allowed. So that's sort of why it was not accepted, and that's sort of why there was this big shortfall in terms of Act 44. Just some couple tidbits there you can use. It's important, I think it's great to read all of this just to have an idea. Some potential supplemental legislation to Act 44 that's been discussed. You know, there's fuel tax increases. A lot of these have already been talked about, especially back when Act 44 was being come up with. There's the vehicle miles travel taxation, the public-private partnership, lease of the turnpike, local and regional tax options, which some have been put into place, and then the phase out of state police funding from the motor license fund. Now it's important I want to clarify that I put these down here, but it's sort of hard to really say to do one of these things. This isn't like a quick fix, you know, hey, let's just make this happen and increase the taxes or something like that, because a lot of this has been thought out and tried before, especially back in the original 2007, you know, I wouldn't say crisis, but just when they started to think about Act 44. But then again, it's just important to know that these are some of the potential ideas that could supplement this type of funding. So before I go to some of the recommendations to Act 44, I did want to mention that, again, this is not like so the idea that I have, and that I think that many of you should have when you go to Harrisburg, is not so much to go out there and tell or say this is, oh, we think this, you know, this tax is a great idea, or this, you know, public-private partnership is a great idea, even though we're going to talk about that. The idea is more so to sort of talk to your legislator and say that this is a great, you know, that this is a great concern for you, and that this is very important, and that more than anything, just imminent or quick action is what you would like to see with them. I'm sure they've been talking about this, and in fact, we're going to talk about some of the options that have started to come out from the transportation committees. But I think that it's better to sort of just show that this is something very important to you, and that you're aware of what's going on, and that you're very knowledgeable about, you know, that you've looked into this, and that you support, you know, any decision that will make something quick or something, you know, viable in the short term and in the long term in terms of legislation. So a couple of things that I did want to mention in terms of Act 44. I'm not sure how we want to handle this, but these are just some things that speaking to some of my professors and some of the people at CMU, there's some recommendations with Act 44. So a couple of things. Basically, Act 44 allocates 30% of state operating subsidies. So basically, 30% of Act 44 is based on performance. However, that's more so on service.